I was sitting in my living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the crystal chandelier I'd bought in Paris 30 years ago, when my son Marcus walked in without knocking. His shoes were tracking mud across my cream-colored carpet that had cost more than his first car. He didn't even look at me, just pulled out his phone and started recording. "Mom, we need to talk about your living situation. This house is too big, you're getting older, and frankly, it's becoming a safety concern. I found a wonderful facility that specializes in senior care. They have activities, nurses on staff, everything you could possibly need." I looked at him standing there in his wrinkled suit, his tie slightly crooked, and I thought about the boy who used to climb into my lap and beg me to read him one more story. The boy who cried when I dropped him off at college. The boy who promised he would always take care of me just like I'd taken care of him. But that boy was gone, replaced by this stranger who couldn't even be bothered to sit down for this conversation. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were trembling slightly. "I'm only 68 years old. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I go to yoga 3 times a week. I volunteer at the library. I have my book club." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Mom, the decision is already made. I've signed the papers, you move in next week. They're expecting you on Monday. Brenda and I have already started packing up the guest room. We figured you won't need much, just clothes and personal items. Everything else we'll put in storage or donate." Brenda, his wife of 15 years. A woman who had never liked me from the moment Marcus brought her home. A woman who smiled to my face and then whispered poison in my son's ear when she thought I couldn't hear. A woman who had been eyeing my jewelry collection and my artwork and my furniture since the day of their wedding. "You've already signed papers?" I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Without even discussing this with me. This is my home, Marcus. I raised you in this house. Your father and I built our entire life here." "Dad's been gone for 5 years, Mom," he said, finally looking at me. But his eyes were cold, distant, as if he were looking at a problem to be solved rather than the woman who gave birth to him. "You can't keep living in the past. This house is worth over $2 million. Do you have any idea how much money is just sitting here doing nothing? The property taxes alone are insane, and you're just one person rattling around in 6,000 square feet." There it was. The real reason my son didn't care about my safety or my well-being. He cared about my money, about his inheritance, about getting his hands on everything my late husband Gerald and I had worked 40 years to build. "So this is about money," I said quietly. "This has always been about money, hasn't it? Ever since your father passed, you've been circling like a vulture waiting for me to die so you can cash in." Marcus's face flushed red. "That's not fair, Mom. I'm trying to help you. You're being selfish keeping all this when Brenda and I are struggling. We have bills, we have Emma's college tuition coming up. We could really use some help here." Emma, my granddaughter, whom I hadn't seen in over a year because Brenda always had some excuse about why they couldn't visit. Emma, who used to spend summers with me baking cookies and playing in the garden. Emma, who had stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped existing in my life the moment Brenda decided I was no longer useful. "I've offered to help with Emma's tuition," I reminded him. "I told you I would pay for her entire education just like I paid for yours. But you said you wanted to do it yourself, that you didn't need my charity." "Well, things have changed," Marcus snapped. "And anyway, this isn't just about the money. The facility is really nice, Mom. They have a pool, they do trips to the theater, you'll make friends your own age. It'll be good for you." I stood up slowly, drawing myself to my full height. Even at 68, I was still 5'9", and when I wanted to, I could command a room. I'd spent 30 years as the vice president of marketing for one of the largest corporations in the state. I'd negotiated million-dollar deals, I'd fired people who thought they could intimidate me, and I certainly wasn't going to be bullied by my own son. "Get out," I said quietly, but with steel in my voice. "What?" "Get out of my house, Marcus. And don't come back until you're ready to apologize and treat me with the respect I deserve. I am not some feeble old woman who needs to be put away. I am your mother, and I will make my own decisions about my own life." He stared at me for a moment, and I saw something flicker across his face, surprise, maybe, or anger, but then his expression hardened. Fine, he said, turning toward the door. But you're making a mistake, Mom. You can't take care of yourself forever. And when something happens, when you fall or have a medical emergency, don't come crying to me. Brenda and I have our own lives, our own problems. We can't drop everything to rescue you every time you're too stubborn to accept help. I've never asked you to rescue me, I called after him as he walked out. I've never asked you for anything except to love me, and apparently that's too much to ask. The door slammed, and I stood there in my living room, surrounded by the life I'd built, the memories I'd collected. For the first time since Gerald died, I felt truly alone. I walked to the window and watched Marcus get into his BMW, the one I'd helped him buy 3 years ago when his business was struggling. Watched him pull out of the driveway without looking back. And I made a decision right then and there. If Marcus wanted to treat me like I was already dead, if he wanted to warehouse me away so he could get his hands on my money, then fine. I would give him exactly what he wanted, but not in the way he expected. That evening, I called my lawyer, Robert Chen. A man I'd known for 25 years, a man who had handled Gerald's will and my financial planning and every legal matter I'd ever needed. Robert, I said when he answered, I need to make some changes to my will. Significant changes. Can you come by tomorrow morning? Of course, Margaret, he said, and I could hear the concern in his voice. Is everything all right? Everything is fine, I lied. I just need to take care of some things while I still can. You know how it is. We scheduled the appointment for 9 the next morning, and after I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the expensive red wine Gerald and I had been saving for a special occasion. Well, if this wasn't special, I didn't know what was. I sat in Gerald's old leather chair, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne, and I thought about my life. I'd grown up poor in a small town in Georgia, the daughter of a seamstress and a factory worker. I'd put myself through college working 3 jobs. I clawed my way up the corporate ladder in an era when women, especially black women, were expected to be secretaries, not executives. I'd married Gerald when I was 26, and we'd built an empire together, real estate investments, a successful consulting business, properties all over the country. We'd been partners in every sense of the word. And when he died, he'd left everything to me, trusting that I would manage it wisely, trusting that I would take care of our son. But Marcus had changed. Or maybe he'd always been this way and I'd just been too blind to see it. He'd married Brenda against my advice. I'd seen from the beginning that she was more interested in what Marcus could provide than who he was as a person. But I'd kept my mouth shut because I wanted my son to be happy. At first, things had been good. Marcus had started his own consulting firm. It had struggled at first, but with some financial help from Gerald and me, it had eventually become profitable. Brenda had gotten pregnant with Emma, and for a few years, we'd been a real family. But then Gerald had died, and something had shifted. Marcus had become distant, focused on work, on money, on building his own legacy. And Brenda had become more demanding, more critical, always pointing out ways that I was failing as a mother, as a grandmother, as a person. The next morning, Robert arrived promptly at 9, carrying his leather briefcase and wearing the same concerned expression he'd had on the phone. Margaret, he said, giving me a hug. You look tired. What's going on? I made us coffee and we sat in the sunroom overlooking the garden where I grew roses and jasmine and honeysuckle. The garden where Marcus had played as a child, where Emma had once helped me plant tomatoes. I told Robert everything about Marcus's visit, about his plans to put me in a facility, about the way he talked about my house like it was just an asset to be liquidated. I want to change my will, I said when I'd finished. I want to make sure that Marcus doesn't get a single penny when I die. Robert set down his coffee cup carefully. Margaret, I understand you're upset, and you have every right to be. But this is a major decision. You shouldn't make it in anger. Maybe give it a few days. Let things cool down. Talk to Marcus again? I'm not acting in anger, I said firmly. I'm acting with clarity. For the first time in years. I've been making excuses for Marcus, telling myself that he's busy, that he's stressed, that deep down he still loves me. But the truth is, he doesn't love me, Robert. He loves my money. And I'll be damned if I'm going to reward that. All right, Robert said slowly. So, what did you have in mind? Do you want to leave everything to charity? Set up a foundation? I'd been thinking about this all night, lying awake in my bed staring at the ceiling. Do you remember Teresa Johnson? Your nurse? Robert asked. From when you had your surgery last year? Yes, I said. Teresa took care of me for 6 weeks after my hip replacement. She came to the house every day, checked my vitals, helped me with physical therapy, cooked meals, talked to me, kept me company. And do you know how many times Marcus visited during those 6 weeks? Twice. He came twice, for less than an hour each time, because he was too busy with work. And Teresa was there, Robert said, understanding dawning in his eyes. Yes, I said. Teresa was there. She listened to me cry about missing Gerald. She encouraged me when I was frustrated with my recovery. She treated me like a human being, not like a burden. And when those 6 weeks were over and she didn't have to come anymore, she still called. She still visited. She brought me books from the library and homemade soup when I had a cold. She's been more of a daughter to me in 1 year than Marcus has been a son in the last 5. Robert was quiet for a moment. You want to leave everything to Teresa. I want to leave the bulk of my estate to Teresa, I corrected. I'll leave Marcus something small enough that he can't contest the will on the grounds that I forgot about him, but not enough to make any real difference. And I want to write him a letter explaining exactly why I made this decision. Margaret, this is going to destroy your relationship with your son. What relationship? I asked bitterly. We don't have a relationship, Robert. We have a transaction. He pretends to care about me, and I'm supposed to reward him with money and property and gratitude. Well, I'm done pretending. Robert sighed, but he opened his briefcase and pulled out his laptop. All right. Let's draft the new will. But I want you to sleep on this for one more night. If you still feel the same way tomorrow, we'll make it official. We spent the next 2 hours going through my assets. The house worth $2.3 million. The investment portfolio worth another $4 million. The rental properties in 3 different states. The life insurance, the retirement accounts. The jewelry collection that included pieces from Tiffany and Cartier and Harry Winston. Everything Gerald and I had built together. I want Teresa to have the house, I said. And the majority of the liquid assets. I want her to be able to live comfortably, to never have to worry about money the way I did when I was her age. And Marcus? Marcus can have the rental property in Cleveland, I said. It's worth about $300,000. Enough that he can't say I completely disinherited him, but nowhere near what he was expecting. Robert typed everything into his laptop, his expression neutral, professional. What about your granddaughter, Emma? Do you want to leave her anything? I thought about Emma. About the little girl who used to call me Gamma and beg to spend the night. About the teenager who now barely acknowledged my existence. Put $50,000 in a trust for Emma for college, I said. But she can only access it if she reaches out to me, if she makes an effort to have a relationship with me. I won't bribe her love, but I'll reward it if it's genuine. And if she doesn't reach out? Then the money goes to Teresa as well. Robert finished typing and turned the laptop toward me so I could review the document. It was all there in black and white. The end of my relationship with my son. The beginning of something new. I'll send this to you tonight for review, Robert said, closing the laptop. Read it over, make sure it's exactly what you want. And if you still want to proceed, we'll schedule a signing for tomorrow afternoon. After Robert left, I called Teresa. I hadn't told her any of this, hadn't mentioned Marcus's visit or my plans. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and cheerful. Miss Margaret, I was just thinking about you. I found a new recipe for peach cobbler and I was going to try it this weekend. Want me to bring you some? That sounds wonderful, Teresa, I said, and I felt tears prick my eyes. This woman who owed me nothing, who I'd paid to take care of me, and who had given me so much more than I'd ever paid for. Actually, I was wondering if you were free for lunch tomorrow. I'd love to treat you. Of course, she said. I have to work until 2, but I can meet you after that. Is everything okay? You sound a little off. Everything's fine, I assured her. I just want to see you, that's all. We made plans to meet at my favorite restaurant, a little French bistro downtown. After I hung up, I sat there holding my phone, thinking about how strange life was. How the people you expected to be there forever could disappear, and how strangers could become family. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about Marcus. About whether I was making the right decision. Part of me wanted to call him, to give him one more chance to apologize, to show me that he still cared. But I knew that if I did that, if I showed any weakness, he would see it as an opportunity to push harder. To manipulate me into doing what he wanted. I thought about Brenda too. About whether she knew what Marcus was planning or if this was all his idea. I suspected she knew. I suspected this had been her idea from the beginning. She'd never understood why Gerald and I had insisted on living modestly despite our wealth. Why we'd stayed in the same house for 40 years, why we'd driven sensible cars and shopped at normal stores instead of flaunting our money. Brenda liked expensive things, designer handbags, luxury vacations, country club memberships. And I knew that Marcus's income, while comfortable, wasn't enough to support the lifestyle Brenda wanted. So they'd been waiting. Waiting for me to die. Waiting to inherit. Waiting to finally live the life they thought they deserved. Except I wasn't dead yet. And I had no intention of making it easy for them. The next morning, I reread the will that Robert had sent me. It was exactly what I'd asked for, clear and thorough and final. I emailed him back confirming that I wanted to proceed, and at 2:30 that afternoon, I met him at his office to sign the documents. "This is your last chance to change your mind," Robert said as he laid the papers out in front of me. "Once you sign this, it's legally binding." "I know," I said. And I picked up the pen. Robert provided 2 witnesses, both paralegals from his firm, and we all signed in the appropriate places. It took less than 10 minutes to dismantle the future Marcus had been counting on. "I'll keep the original in my safe," Robert said. "And I'll send you a copy for your records. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes," I said. "I want you to draft a letter to Marcus to be delivered after my death, explaining my decision. I'll write the content, but I want it on your letterhead. I want it to be official." "I can do that," Robert said. "Just send me the text when you're ready." I went home and spent the rest of the afternoon in my office, the room where Gerald used to work, the room where I'd paid bills and managed our investments and planned our future. I opened my laptop and I started to write. "Dear Marcus, by the time you read this, I will be gone, and you will have attended the reading of my will. You will have discovered that things did not turn out the way you expected. I imagine you are angry right now. Possibly threatening to contest the will, possibly calling me names, possibly wondering how your mother could betray you like this. So let me explain. I have not betrayed you, Marcus. You betrayed me when you decided that I was nothing more than an obstacle between you and your inheritance. When you tried to have me declared incompetent and locked away so you could get your hands on my money. When you stopped seeing me as your mother and started seeing me as a problem to be solved. You made your choice, and now I have made mine. For 40 years, your father and I worked to build something meaningful. We didn't do it for the money, although the money was nice. We did it because we wanted to create security for our family. We wanted to know that you would never have to struggle the way we did. We wanted to give you opportunities we never had. And we did, Marcus. We put you through private school, we paid for your college, we helped you start your business. We were there for you every single time you needed us. And what did you do in return? You visited me twice in 6 weeks when I was recovering from surgery. You ignored my phone calls. You let your wife poison our relationship. You tried to throw me away like I was garbage. So yes, I changed my will. And yes, I left the bulk of my estate to someone else. To someone who treated me with kindness and dignity and respect when my own son could not. I left it to Teresa Johnson, the nurse who cared for me, who saw me as a person worth caring about. I hope this hurts, Marcus. I hope it makes you realize what you lost. I hope it teaches you that love and loyalty matter more than money. Although honestly, I doubt it will. You will probably just be angry. You will probably blame me, or Teresa, or anyone except yourself. But that's not my problem anymore. I am free of you and your expectations and your greed. And if there is any small part of you that still cares, if there is any piece of the little boy I raised still inside you somewhere, then I hope someday you understand why I did this. I hope someday you realize that you destroyed our relationship all by yourself. And I hope someday you learn to value people for who they are, not what they can give you. But I won't be here to see it. I will be with your father, and we will be at peace. Goodbye, Marcus. I wish things could have been different. Your mother. Margaret. I read it over 3 times, making small edits, and then I sent it to Robert with instructions to include it with the will when the time came. Then I closed my laptop and I went to meet Teresa for lunch. She was already at the restaurant when I arrived, sitting at a table by the window looking at the menu. She stood up when she saw me and gave me a big hug. Miss Margaret, you look beautiful. Is that a new dress? I've had this for years, I said laughing. But thank you, honey. You always know how to make me feel good. We ordered our food and talked about everything and nothing. Teresa told me about her job at the hospital, about her teenage son who was applying to colleges, about her mother who was dealing with arthritis. She asked about my book club and my yoga classes and my garden. And it was so easy. So natural. So different from conversations with Marcus that always felt like negotiations. Can I ask you something? Teresa said as we were finishing our dessert. Of course. Why did you really invite me to lunch today? Not that I'm not happy to see you, but you seem like you have something on your mind. I smiled. She knew me too well. I wanted to tell you how much you mean to me, I said. When you took care of me last year, it was during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was grieving Gerald. I was in pain from the surgery. I felt old and useless. And you made me feel human again. You reminded me that I still had value, that my life still had meaning. Teresa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Miss Margaret, you have always had value. You're one of the strongest, most incredible women I've ever met. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. My son tried to put me in a nursing home, I said, and I watched her face shift from warmth to shock to anger. What? Why would he do that? Because he wants my house. He wants my money. He wants his inheritance, and I'm in the way. That's horrible, Teresa said. What did you tell him? I told him to get out. And then I changed my will. I said it casually, but I watched Teresa's reaction carefully. Her eyes widened. You changed your will? I left everything to you. For a moment, Teresa just stared at me. And then she started to cry. Miss Margaret, no. You can't. I can't accept that. What about your son? What about your granddaughter? My son has made it very clear what he thinks of me, I said gently. And my granddaughter hasn't spoken to me in over a year. You, Teresa, have been more family to me than either of them. You deserve this. But I was just doing my job, Teresa protested. I didn't help you because I expected anything in return. I know, I said. That's exactly why you're the right person. Teresa, I'm 68 years old. I'm in good health, but I'm not going to live forever. And when I'm gone, I want to know that everything Gerald and I built is going to someone who will appreciate it. Someone who will use it wisely. Someone who will honor our memory. Teresa was still crying. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll let me do this one good thing with my life. Of course, Teresa whispered. Of course I'll accept it. But Miss Margaret, you have done so many good things with your life. Don't talk like this is the only one. We finished lunch and I drove home feeling lighter than I had in days. I'd done the right thing. I knew it in my bones. Marcus could be angry, Brenda could be furious, it didn't matter anymore. I was free. But freedom comes with a price, and I was about to discover just how high that price could be. 3 days later, I was in my garden pruning roses when a car pulled up in my driveway. I looked up and saw Marcus getting out. But he wasn't alone. Brenda was with him, and so was another man I didn't recognize, someone in a suit carrying a briefcase. They walked toward me in formation, like soldiers going into battle. and I knew whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to be pleasant. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Brenda. What a surprise. Don't play innocent, Mom, Marcus said, his face red with anger. We know what you did. We know you changed your will. I set down my pruning shears and straightened up. And how exactly do you know that? That's supposed to be confidential information. We have our sources, Brenda said smugly. Did you really think you could cut out your own son and we wouldn't find out? Actually, I had thought exactly that. Robert had promised me that the will was confidential, that no one would know about the changes until after my death. But apparently someone in his office had talked. Or maybe Marcus had bribed someone. Either way, my plans were no longer secret. What I do with my estate is my business, I said. Not yours? The hell it is, Marcus shouted. That's my inheritance you're giving away to some stranger. To some nurse who probably manipulated you into changing your will. Teresa did not manipulate me, I said coldly. She treated me with kindness and respect, which is more than I can say for you. The man in the suit stepped forward. Mrs. Blackwell, my name is David Rosenthal. I'm an attorney specializing in elder law. Your son and daughter-in-law have retained my services because they're concerned about your mental competency. There it was. The nuclear option. I see, I said. And what exactly makes you think I'm not mentally competent? You're making irrational decisions, Rosenthal said smoothly. Cutting your only son out of your will, leaving your estate to someone you barely know. These are not the actions of someone thinking clearly. I've known Teresa for over a year, I said. And I've known my son for 43 years. I know exactly what I'm doing. Mom, please, Marcus said, and suddenly his voice was softer, more gentle. The voice of the son I used to know. We're worried about you. You're isolated, you're not thinking straight. Let us help you. We can get you evaluated by a doctor, we can make sure you're okay. I don't need to be evaluated, I said. I need you to leave my property right now. We're not leaving until you agree to see a doctor, Brenda said. Marcus has every right to make sure you're competent to make these kinds of decisions. Actually, he doesn't, I said. I am an adult. I am of sound mind, and I have every right to distribute my assets however I see fit. Now please leave before I call the police. Rosenthal pulled a document from his briefcase. Mrs. Blackwell, we're prepared to file a petition with the court to have you evaluated for competency if you refuse to cooperate voluntarily. This is just a friendly warning that we're serious about protecting Mr. Blackwell's interests. Protecting his interests, I repeated. Not protecting me. Protecting his money. This isn't about money, Mom, Marcus said. But his eyes betrayed him. This is about family. About making sure you're taken care of. If this was about family, I said, my voice shaking with rage, you would have visited me more than twice when I was recovering from surgery. If this was about family, you wouldn't have tried to put me in a home without my consent. If this was about family, you would treat me like your mother instead of like an ATM. We're done here, I said. Get off my property, all three of you. And Marcus, if you or your lawyers come near me again, I will file a restraining order. Do you understand? For a moment, I thought Marcus might actually hit me. I saw the rage flash across his face, saw his hands clench into fists. But then Rosenthal touched his arm and whispered something, and Marcus took a step back. This isn't over, Mom, he said. Not by a long shot. They left, and I stood there in my garden shaking. I'd never been threatened like that before, never had someone I loved turn on me with such viciousness. I went inside and called Robert. They know, I said as soon as he answered. Marcus knows about the will and he's hired a lawyer to challenge my competency. Margaret, I'm so sorry, Robert said. Someone in my office must have talked. I'm conducting an investigation, but that doesn't help you right now. What do I do? I asked. Can they force me to be evaluated? They can petition the court, Robert said. But they'll need evidence that you're actually incompetent, and from what you've told me, they don't have any. You're lucid, you're managing your own affairs, you're making rational decisions, even if Marcus doesn't like those decisions. So what do I do? Document everything, Robert said. Keep records of your activities, your medical checkups, your interactions with other people. If they do file a petition, we'll need to show the court that you're completely competent. And Margaret, you might want to consider getting your own medical evaluation done proactively to head off any claims. Fine, I said. Set it up. Whatever I need to do. I'll make some calls, Robert promised. And Margaret, I really am sorry about this breach of confidentiality. The person responsible will be terminated. That doesn't matter now, I said. What matters is protecting myself from my own son. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine, even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. And I sat in Gerald's chair and I cried. Not for Marcus, but for the relationship we'd once had. For the son I'd raised who no longer existed. I cried for all the years I'd wasted hoping things would get better, hoping Marcus would change, hoping that somewhere deep inside him was still the boy who loved me. But that boy was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. And I needed to accept that and move on. The next week was a blur of appointments. Robert arranged for me to see a neurologist, a psychiatrist, and my regular doctor, all of whom confirmed what I already knew, that I was in excellent health, both physically and mentally. The neurologist did a full cognitive assessment, and I scored in the 95th percentile for my age. The psychiatrist talked to me for 2 hours about my life, my relationships, my decision-making process, and concluded that I showed no signs of dementia, depression, or any other condition that would affect my judgment. And my regular doctor, Dr. Harrison, whom I'd been seeing for 15 years, wrote a detailed letter stating that I was one of the healthiest patients in his practice. You're building a very strong case, Robert told me when I delivered all the medical reports to his office. If Marcus does file a petition, the court is going to take one look at this evidence and throw it out. Good, I said. Because I'm not backing down. I'm not changing my will, and I'm not letting my son bully me into doing what he wants. I believe you, Robert said with a slight smile. For what it's worth, Margaret, I think you're doing the right thing. Not many people would have the courage to stand up to their own family like this. It's not courage, I said. It's survival. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Maybe it was courage. Maybe after years of putting other people first, of sacrificing my own needs and wants to make Marcus happy, I was finally learning to stand up for myself. Maybe that's what real courage was, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what was right even when it was terrifying. I didn't hear from Marcus for 2 weeks, and I started to hope that maybe he'd given up. That maybe Rosenthal had advised him that challenging my competency was a losing battle. That maybe somewhere deep down Marcus still had enough love for me to back off. But I should have known better. On a Tuesday morning in late September, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door and handed me a thick envelope. Margaret Blackwell. He asked. Yes, you've been served, ma'am. Have a nice day. I stood there on my porch holding the envelope, my hands trembling. I knew what it was before I even opened it. Marcus had filed a petition with the court claiming I was mentally incompetent and requesting that he be appointed as my legal guardian with full control over my finances and medical decisions. I went inside and called Robert. They did it, I said. They actually did it. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Robert said. Don't panic, Margaret. We have all the evidence we need to fight this. When Robert arrived, he reviewed the petition carefully, his expression growing darker with each page. This is aggressive, he said finally. They're not just challenging the will, they're trying to take complete control of your life. They're claiming you're a danger to yourself, that you're making irrational financial decisions, that you need 24-hour supervision. Can they win? I asked. No, Robert said firmly. Not with the evidence we have. But Margaret, this is going to get ugly. They're going to drag your name through the mud. They're going to call witnesses. They're going to try to paint a picture of you as a confused old woman who doesn't know what she's doing. Are you ready for that? I don't have a choice, do I? You always have a choice, Robert said. You could change the will back, give Marcus what he wants, avoid this whole mess. I thought about it for maybe half a second. No, I said. I'm not rewarding his behavior. I'm not letting him win. Then we fight, Robert said. And Margaret, we're going to win. The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. And during that time, Marcus and his lawyers launched a full-scale investigation into my life. They subpoenaed my medical records, my financial records, my phone records. They interviewed my neighbors, my doctor, my yoga instructor, anyone who had contact with me. They were looking for anything they could use to prove I was incompetent. Some slip-up, some mistake, some evidence that I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs. But they found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. I was careful. I documented everything. I kept receipts. I maintained detailed records of all my activities. I even started keeping a daily journal describing what I did each day, who I talked to, what decisions I made. I wasn't going to give Marcus any ammunition. Teresa called me almost every day, checking on me, offering support. "I feel terrible about this, Miss Margaret," she said one evening. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't accepted, if I'd just told you no." "Don't you dare blame yourself," I said firmly. "This is not your fault, Teresa. This is Marcus's fault for being greedy, and Brenda's fault for encouraging him. You have done nothing wrong." "But your relationship with your son was already destroyed," I interrupted. "Long before I changed my will. Marcus made his choice. He chose money over me. And now he has to live with the consequences of that choice." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. I thought about Gerald. About how disappointed he would be to see what Marcus had become. We'd raised our son to value family, to be kind and generous and compassionate. And somehow we'd failed. Somewhere along the way, Marcus had learned all the wrong lessons. I thought about my own parents. About how they'd worked themselves to the bone to give me opportunities they never had. My mother had sewn clothes for rich white women for pennies. My father had worked double shifts at the factory. And they'd saved every penny so I could go to college, so I could have a better life. And I had. I'd built something meaningful, something lasting. And now my own son was trying to take it all away. Not because he needed it, but because he felt entitled to it. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. I chose a navy blue Chanel suit that Gerald had bought me for our 35th anniversary. I wore my pearls, the ones that had belonged to his mother. I styled my hair in an elegant updo and I put on just enough makeup to look polished but not overdone. I wanted the judge to see a competent, confident woman, not the confused elderly person Marcus was trying to portray. Robert picked me up at 8:30 and we drove to the courthouse in silence. I could tell he was nervous, though he was trying to hide it. He kept adjusting his tie, checking his briefcase, making sure he had all the documents we needed. "Remember," he said as we pulled into the parking lot. "Stay calm. No matter what they say, no matter how they try to provoke you, just stay calm and let me do the talking." "I understand," I said. The courtroom was small and plain, nothing like the dramatic settings you see on television. There were fluorescent lights, uncomfortable wooden benches, and an American flag in the corner. Marcus was already there, sitting at a table with Rosenthal and Brenda. When I walked in, Brenda whispered something to Marcus and they both turned to look at me. I held my head high and walked to our table on the opposite side of the room. I didn't look at them, didn't acknowledge them. I was done giving them power over my emotions. The judge was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked tired, like she'd already heard a dozen cases that morning and ours was just one more problem to solve. "This is a petition for guardianship," she said, reading from the file in front of her. "Mr. Marcus Blackwell is seeking to be appointed guardian over his mother, Margaret Blackwell, claiming she lacks the mental capacity to manage her own affairs. Is that correct, Mr. Rosenthal?" "Yes, Your Honor," Rosenthal said, standing up. "We believe Mrs. Blackwell is suffering from diminished mental capacity that makes her vulnerable to exploitation. She has made several irrational financial decisions, including changing her will to leave her entire estate to a virtual stranger while disinheriting her own son. We believe she needs protection and that Mr. Blackwell, as her only living relative, is the appropriate person to provide that protection." "Mr. Chen?" the judge asked, looking at Robert. "Your Honor, This petition is completely without merit, Robert said. Mrs. Blackwell has been thoroughly evaluated by 3 separate medical professionals, all of whom have concluded that she is in excellent mental and physical health. She is not being exploited. She is making informed decisions about her own property, decisions that her son simply doesn't like. This petition is nothing more than a greedy attempt to seize control of his mother's assets. The judge looked at me over her reading glasses. Mrs. Blackwell, do you understand why you're here today? Yes, Your Honor, I said clearly. My son is trying to have me declared incompetent because I changed my will and he doesn't like it. And you're aware that if I grant this petition, your son would have control over your finances, your medical care, and virtually every aspect of your life? I'm very aware, Your Honor. And I'm here to fight it with everything I have. The judge almost smiled. All right then, let's proceed. Mr. Rosenthal, you may call your first witness. Rosenthal called Dr. Philip Morrison, a psychiatrist he'd hired to review my case. Dr. Morrison had never met me, never examined me, never spoken to me. But he'd reviewed some of my medical records and based on that, he was prepared to offer his professional opinion. Dr. Morrison, Rosenthal asked, based on your review of Mrs. Blackwell's records and the facts of this case, do you believe she has the mental capacity to manage her own affairs? I have significant concerns, Dr. Morrison said pompously. A woman of her age making such dramatic changes to her estate plan, particularly in favor of someone she's known for a relatively short time. These are red flags for possible undue influence or diminished capacity. And what would you recommend? Rosenthal asked. I would recommend a full psychiatric evaluation and, depending on the results, possible guardianship to protect her from making further questionable decisions. Robert stood up for cross-examination. Dr. Morrison, you've never actually met Mrs. Blackwell, is that correct? That's correct, but I've reviewed her medical records. Have you reviewed the evaluations performed by Dr. Chen, the neurologist who actually examined her? I skimmed them, yes. You skimmed them, Robert repeated. And Dr. Chen concluded that Mrs. Blackwell scored in the 95th percentile for cognitive function for her age group. Did you see that? I saw it, but test scores don't tell the whole story. What about Dr. Williams, the psychiatrist who spent 2 hours interviewing Mrs. Blackwell and concluded she showed no signs of dementia, depression, or any other mental health condition that would affect her judgment? Did you skim that report too? Dr. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. As I said, these evaluations don't capture the full picture of someone's decision-making capacity. Or perhaps, Robert said, the full picture is that Mrs. Blackwell is a competent adult making decisions you personally disagree with. But that doesn't make her incompetent, does it? I believe she needs protection. You believe she needs protection, or you believe Mr. Blackwell needs access to her money? Objection. Rosenthal jumped up. Your Honor, Mr. Chen is badgering the witness. I'll withdraw the question, Robert said, sitting down. He'd made his point. Rosenthal called several more witnesses, Marcus's business partner who testified that Marcus was a responsible person who would make a good guardian, the manager of a nursing home who testified about how wonderful their facility was, and how Mrs. Blackwell would be much safer there, even Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor who Brenda had apparently befriended and convinced to testify. Mrs. Peterson, Rosenthal asked. How long have you lived next door to Mrs. Blackwell? About 10 years, Mrs. Peterson said, looking uncomfortable. And have you noticed any changes in her behavior recently? Well, Mrs. Peterson said hesitantly. She does seem more isolated than she used to be. She doesn't come to the neighborhood gatherings anymore, and sometimes I see her talking to herself in the garden. I wanted to scream that I wasn't talking to myself. I was talking to Gerald, the way I had for 40 years, sharing my day with him the way couples do. But I kept my mouth shut like Robert had told me to. And are you concerned about her living alone at her age? Rosenthal asked. I suppose I am a little bit, Mrs. Peterson admitted. She's not getting any younger. When it was Robert's turn, he asked Mrs. Peterson, have you ever seen Mrs. Blackwell do anything that suggested she was confused or disoriented? No, not exactly. Has she ever left her stove on or forgotten to lock her doors or gotten lost in the neighborhood? No. So when you say you're concerned about her living alone, it's not based on any actual evidence of incompetence, is it? It's just a general feeling that elderly people shouldn't live alone. I suppose so, Mrs. Peterson admitted. Finally, Rosenthal called Marcus to the stand, and I watched my son walk to the witness box and swear to tell the truth. Mr. Blackwell, Rosenthal asked, can you describe your relationship with your mother? We've always been close, Marcus said, and I nearly laughed at the audacity of the lie. I love my mother very much, which is why I'm so concerned about her recent behavior. What behavior concerns you? She's become paranoid, Marcus said. She thinks everyone is trying to take advantage of her. She's pushing away her family, the people who love her, and she's getting very close to this nurse, this woman she barely knows. I think this nurse has manipulated her into changing her will. Have you tried to talk to your mother about your concerns? Many times, Marcus said. But she won't listen. She gets angry and defensive. She threw me out of her house when I tried to suggest that she might need some help. And do you believe your mother is capable of managing her own affairs? Honestly, no, Marcus said, looking directly at the judge. I think she needs help. I think she needs protection. And I'm willing to provide that. I don't want her money, Your Honor. I just want to make sure she's safe. Such beautiful lies, delivered with such conviction. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed him myself. Robert stood up for cross-examination, and I could see the anger in his eyes. Mr. Blackwell, you testified that you and your mother have always been close. Is that correct? Yes. How many times did you visit your mother while she was recovering from hip replacement surgery? Marcus hesitated. I'm not sure exactly. Let me refresh your memory, Robert said, pulling out a document. According to the visitor log kept by Teresa Johnson, the nurse who was caring for your mother, you visited exactly twice in 6 weeks. Does that sound right? I was busy with work. Too busy to visit your mother who you claim to love very much. I called her regularly. According to your mother's phone records, Robert said, pulling out another document, you called her 4 times in those 6 weeks. An average of once every 10 days. Does that sound like someone who's very close to their mother? Marcus's face was red. I'm a busy man. I have responsibilities. Yes, you have responsibilities, Robert agreed. Like trying to force your mother into a nursing home so you could sell her house. Is that one of your responsibilities? I was trying to help her. Help her or help yourself to her estate. Objection, Rosenthal shouted. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Chen, please rephrase. Mr. Blackwell, Robert said. Isn't it true that you only became concerned about your mother's welfare after she changed her will? That's not true. So you were concerned about her before that. Can you tell me one instance before the will change when you expressed concern about her mental capacity? Marcus was silent. I'll take that as a no, Robert said. Now, Mr. Blackwell, you testified that you don't want your mother's money. Is that correct? That's correct. So if the court denies this petition, you won't contest your mother's will when she passes away. Marcus looked at Rosenthal, who was shaking his head slightly. I would have to consider all my options at that time. In other words, Robert said, you absolutely do want your mother's money. You just want the court to help you get it. Objection, Your Honor. Rosenthal was on his feet again. Withdrawn, Robert said. No further questions. After Marcus stepped down, the judge called for a lunch recess. Robert and I went to a diner across the street, but I couldn't eat. I just pushed food around my plate while Robert tried to reassure me that things were going well. We're winning, he said. I can feel it. The judge can see right through Marcus's act. I hope you're right, I said. When we returned to the courthouse that afternoon, it was our turn to present our case. Robert called Dr. Chen, the neurologist who had evaluated me. Dr. Chen, Robert asked, in your professional opinion, does Mrs. Blackwell have the mental capacity to manage her own affairs? Absolutely, Dr. Chen said. I conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment and Mrs. Blackwell performed exceptionally well. She has excellent memory, reasoning skills, and judgment. There is no medical reason whatsoever to question her capacity. Could she be suffering from early-stage dementia that might not show up on tests? No, Dr. Chen said firmly. I've been evaluating patients for dementia for 25 years. I know what to look for, and Mrs. Blackwell shows none of the signs. She is as sharp as any 40-year-old I've tested. Rosenthal tried to poke holes in Dr. Chen's testimony, but it was solid. Dr. Shen had done a thorough evaluation and his conclusions were unambiguous. Next, Robert called Dr. Williams, the psychiatrist who had interviewed me. Dr. Williams, Robert asked, did you find any evidence that Mrs. Blackwell is suffering from diminished mental capacity? None whatsoever, Dr. Williams said. Mrs. Blackwell is intelligent, articulate, and completely oriented to reality. She understands her financial situation, she understands the consequences of her decisions, and she has rational reasons for making those decisions. In your opinion, could she be suffering from undue influence? No, Dr. Williams said. Undue influence typically involves isolation from family, manipulation, and pressure to make decisions that benefit the influencer. Mrs. Blackwell is not isolated, she has friends, she has activities, she's fully engaged in her community. And her decision to change her will was made independently after careful thought. It's not what her son wants, but that doesn't make it wrong. Then Robert called me to the stand. I walked to the witness box, my heart pounding but my head held high. I'd been dreading this moment, but I was ready. Mrs. Blackwell, Robert asked gently, can you tell the court why you changed your will? I took a deep breath. I changed my will because my son made it clear that he valued my money more than he valued me. He tried to have me put in a nursing home against my wishes so he could sell my house. He stopped visiting me except when he needed something. And when I was at my most vulnerable, recovering from surgery, he abandoned me. But Teresa Johnson, my nurse, she was there every single day. She cared for me, she treated me with dignity and respect. And after my recovery was over, she continued to be part of my life, not because she wanted something from me, but because she genuinely cared about me. I changed my will because I wanted to leave my estate to someone who would appreciate it. Someone who had earned it through kindness and loyalty. Do you understand that this decision has created conflict with your son? Of course I do, I said. But I'm not going to be manipulated into changing my mind. My assets are mine to distribute as I see fit. And I choose to give them to someone who has been a daughter to me in every way that matters. Mrs. Blackwell, Robert said. If the court denies this petition and allows you to maintain control of your affairs, what do you plan to do? I plan to continue living in my home, I said. I plan to continue managing my investments and my properties. I plan to continue my volunteer work and my friendships and my activities. And when the time comes, I plan to leave everything to Teresa, exactly as my will currently states. Thank you, Mrs. Blackwell, Robert said. No further questions. Rosenthal stood up for cross-examination, and I braced myself. Mrs. Blackwell, he said in a falsely sympathetic tone. Isn't it true that you're angry at your son? Yes, I said. I am angry at him. And isn't it possible that this anger is clouding your judgment? That you're making decisions based on emotion rather than logic? No, I said firmly. I'm making decisions based on 43 years of experience as Marcus's mother. I know who he is, I know what he values, and I've decided that I don't want to reward his behavior. But surely you understand that it's natural for a son to inherit his mother's estate. There's nothing natural about trying to have your mother declared incompetent so you can steal her money, I said. My son has shown me exactly who he is, and I believe him. Mrs. Blackwell, don't you think you're being vindictive? I think I'm being realistic, I said. And even if I were being vindictive, which I'm not, that's my right. It's my money, Mr. Rosenthal. I earned it. My husband and I built this estate through decades of hard work and sacrifice, and I'll leave it to whoever I damn well please. The judge looked up at that, and I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. She was trying not to smile. Rosenthal asked me a few more questions, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. He knew he was losing. Finally, both sides rested, and the judge took a short recess to review the evidence. When she came back, her expression was unreadable. "I've reviewed all the testimony and evidence in this case," she said, "and I'm prepared to issue my ruling. This is a case about money, plain and simple. Mr. Blackwell is unhappy that his mother changed her will, and he's using the court system to try to override her decision. But the evidence is overwhelming that Mrs. Blackwell is fully competent to manage her own affairs. She has been evaluated by multiple medical professionals, all of whom have concluded that she is of sound mind. She is articulate, intelligent, and fully capable of making her own decisions. The fact that her son disagrees with those decisions is not grounds for guardianship. Therefore, I am denying the petition for guardianship. Mrs. Blackwell will retain full control over her person and her property. Mr. Blackwell, you and your attorney are ordered to pay Mrs. Blackwell's legal fees, as this petition was filed in bad faith. We're adjourned." She banged her gavel, and it was over. I sat there for a moment, not quite believing it. Robert was grinning and shaking my hand. "We won, Margaret. We won." I looked across the courtroom at Marcus. He was sitting with his head in his hands while Brenda hissed something at him angrily. And I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no relief. Just emptiness. I had won, but what had I really won? The right to die alone, knowing my only son hated me. The right to leave my money to someone who wasn't my family. The right to spend my final years knowing I had failed as a mother. Robert must have seen something in my face because he squeezed my hand. "Margaret, you did the right thing. You stood up for yourself. That takes courage." "It doesn't feel like courage," I said. "It just feels sad." We left the courthouse and Robert drove me home. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw Teresa's car already there. She must have left work early to be there when I got back. She was sitting on my porch steps, and when she saw me, she jumped up and ran over. "Miss Margaret, what happened? Are you okay?" "We won," I said. "The judge denied the petition." Teresa let out a whoop of joy and hugged me tight. "I knew you would. I knew it. Thank God." We went inside and Teresa made tea while I changed out of my suit into comfortable clothes. When I came back downstairs, she had set out cookies and we sat in the living room like we always did. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Honestly, exhausted. And sad." "Sad? But you won." "I won a legal case," I said. "But I lost my son. I mean, he was already lost, but now it's official. There's no going back from this." Teresa was quiet for a moment. "Miss Margaret, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Marcus lost you a long time ago. Through his own choices, his own actions. You gave him chance after chance to be the son you deserved, and he threw it away. This isn't on you. This is on him." "I know that intellectually," I said. "But emotionally it's harder. I keep thinking about all the things I could have done differently. Maybe if I'd been stricter with him when he was younger. Maybe if I'd said no more often. Maybe if I'd seen through Brenda sooner. And maybe," Teresa said gently, "some people are just selfish. Some people only care about themselves and no amount of good parenting can change that. You did your best, Miss Margaret. You loved him, you provided for him, you gave him every opportunity. And he chose to be ungrateful. That's not your failure. That's his." We sat in silence for a while drinking our tea, and I thought about what she'd said. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to stop blaming myself for Marcus's choices. "What happens now?" Teresa asked. "Now I live my life," I said. "I'm going to travel. I'm going to spend time with people who actually care about me. I'm going to enjoy whatever time I have left without guilt or regret." "That sounds perfect," Teresa said. "And you," I said. "You need to start thinking about your future. When the time comes, you're going to have significant resources, and I want you to use them wisely." "Miss Margaret, please don't talk like that. You're going to be around for a long time." "I hope so," I said. "But we both know life is uncertain. I'm 68 years old. I'm healthy, but I'm not immortal. And I want to know that when I'm gone, you'll take care of everything we've built. I promise, Teresa said with tears in her eyes. I promise I'll honor your memory and your husband's memory. I'll use the money to help people the way you've helped me. That's all I ask. The weeks after the hearing were strange. I expected Marcus to appeal or file some other lawsuit, but nothing happened. Robert said that Rosenthal had probably advised him that any further action would be pointless and expensive. I did hear through the neighborhood grapevine that Marcus and Brenda were having financial troubles. Apparently, they'd spent a lot of money on the legal case expecting to win and get control of my estate. When that didn't happen, they were left with massive legal bills and no way to pay them. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I just felt sad. I tried calling Emma, my granddaughter, one more time. I wanted to give her a chance to have a relationship with me before it was too late. But the call went straight to voicemail and she never called back. So I moved on. I joined a travel club for seniors and took a trip to Italy, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I walked through ancient ruins, ate amazing food, and made new friends who knew nothing about my family drama. I started volunteering more at the library, reading to children and helping elderly patrons with the computers. I found that helping others gave my life meaning in a way that Marcus's approval never had. And Teresa became even more important in my life. She came over for dinner at least once a week, brought her son to visit, taught me how to make her grandmother's recipes. We weren't connected by blood, but we were family in every way that mattered. 2 years passed. I was 70 years old and still in relatively good health. I'd had a few minor issues, a bout of bronchitis that landed me in the hospital for a few days, some arthritis in my hands that made gardening harder, but overall I couldn't complain. I hadn't heard from Marcus at all in those 2 years. No phone calls, no emails, no birthday cards, nothing. It was like I'd ceased to exist in his world. But then, one afternoon in March, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Blackwell? This is Emma. My heart skipped a beat. My granddaughter. The girl I'd given up hope of ever hearing from again. Emma, honey, is that you? Yes, Grandma, it's me, she said, and her voice was trembling. I'm sorry I haven't called. I know I should have called a long time ago. But Mom and Dad told me not to. They said you were sick, that you weren't yourself anymore. But I just found out about the court case. About what really happened. And Grandma, I'm so sorry. I sat down heavily, my hands shaking. What do you mean you just found out? I was going through some papers in Dad's office, looking for my birth certificate for a job application, and I found all these legal documents about the guardianship hearing. I read everything. The transcripts, the medical reports, all of it. And I realized that everything Mom and Dad told me was a lie. Oh, sweetheart. They said you were confused. That you were being manipulated by your nurse. That you'd forgotten who we were. But that's not true, is it? You're fine. You were always fine. They just wanted your money. Yes, I said quietly. That's exactly right. I'm so ashamed, Emma said, crying now. I believed them. I didn't even question it. I just accepted that you were sick and I let 2 years go by without talking to you. 2 years, Grandma. I missed 2 years of your life because I was too stupid to see what was really happening. You're not stupid, honey, I said. You trusted your parents. There's nothing wrong with that. But I should have known. I should have come to see you myself instead of just taking their word for it. And now I've wasted so much time. It's not wasted, I said firmly. You're here now. That's what matters. You called. That took courage. Can I see you? Emma asked. Can I come visit? I know I don't deserve it after everything, but I really want to see you, Grandma. I've missed you so much. Of course you can visit, I said, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. You can come anytime you want. How about tomorrow? I can drive up after my classes. I'm at State now, studying nursing. Nursing, I repeated, really? Yeah, Emma said. I was inspired by your nurse, Teresa. I read in the court documents about how she took care of you and I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to help people like that. I started to cry then. Not sad tears, but happy ones. After all this darkness, there was finally light. Emma came to visit the next day, and when I opened the door, I barely recognized her. She'd grown up so much in 2 years. She was taller, more confident, more beautiful. And when she hugged me, she held on tight, like she was afraid I might disappear. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," she whispered. "I'm so sorry," I said, stroking her hair. "It's okay. You're here now. That's all that matters." We spent the whole afternoon talking. I told her everything about Marcus's attempt to put me in a home, about changing my will, about the court case. And she told me about school, about her boyfriend, about her dreams for the future. "Does your father know you're here?" I asked. "Yes," Emma said. "I told him I was coming and that if he had a problem with it, he could deal with it. I'm an adult. I make my own decisions." "What did he say?" "He told me I was being disloyal. That I was choosing you over family." "But Grandma, you are family. You're more family than he's been to me these past few years." "What do you mean?" Emma looked down at her hands. "Ever since the court case, Dad's been different. Angry all the time. He and Mom fight constantly about money, about everything. And he takes it out on me. Nothing I do is good enough. I'm not studying the right major, I'm not dating the right kind of person, I'm wasting my potential. It's exhausting. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I never wanted to come between you and your parents." "You didn't," Emma said firmly. "Dad did this, not you. You just stood up for yourself and he couldn't handle it." Before Emma left that evening, I took her upstairs to my office. "I want to show you something," I said. I opened the safe where I kept my important documents and pulled out a folder. "This is a copy of my will. I want you to read it." Emma looked uncomfortable. "Grandma, I don't want to talk about that. You're not going anywhere anytime soon." "Humor me," I said, "please." She read through the document and her eyes widened when she got to the section about her trust. "Grandma, this says you're leaving me $50,000 for college." "That's right. But only if you maintain a relationship with me. I'm not trying to buy your love, Emma, but I do want to reward genuine family connection." "I don't want your money," Emma said. "I just want you. I want my grandmother back." "You have me," I said. "For as long as I'm here, you have me. And when I'm gone, you'll have the resources to finish your education, to start your career, to build the life you want." Emma hugged me again. "Thank you, Grandma. For everything. For not giving up on me even when I gave up on you." "I could never give up on you," I said. "You're my granddaughter. I love you." After Emma left, I called Teresa to tell her what had happened. "That's wonderful, Miss Margaret," she said. "I'm so happy for you." "I want to change my will again," I said. "Not the main provisions, but I want to increase Emma's trust to $200,000. She's earned it." "Are you sure? That's a lot of money." "I'm sure," I said. "Emma is studying nursing because of you, Teresa. She wants to help people. She's become exactly the kind of person I hoped she would be, and I want to support that." "Then let's do it," Teresa said. "Let's call Robert tomorrow and make the changes." Over the next few months, Emma became a regular part of my life again. She came to visit every other weekend. We talked on the phone several times a week. She even brought her boyfriend, a sweet young man named David, to meet me. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. The wound Marcus had left was still there, but it wasn't as raw as it had been. I was learning to accept that some relationships can't be saved. That sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. I was learning to build a life based on the people who chose to be in it rather than mourning the ones who chose to leave. And then, one October morning, I woke up and something was wrong. I tried to get out of bed, but my left side wouldn't cooperate. My arm hung uselessly at my side, my leg wouldn't support my weight. I tried to call for help but my words came out slurred, incomprehensible. I'd had a stroke. I managed to hit the medical alert button I wore around my neck, and within minutes, paramedics were breaking down my door, loading me into an ambulance, rushing me to the hospital. The next few hours were a blur of tests and doctors and worried faces. Someone must have called Teresa because suddenly she was there, holding my good hand, talking to me in that calm, soothing voice. "You're going to be okay, Miss Margaret," she said. "The doctors say you got here fast enough. They're giving you medication to break up the clot. You're going to be fine." I wanted to believe her, but I'd seen stroke patients before. I knew that fine might mean something very different than it had before. They kept me in the hospital for a week, running tests, doing physical therapy, assessing the damage. The stroke had affected my left side. I had weakness in my arm and leg, difficulty with fine motor skills. My speech was slurred, though it was getting better with therapy. "You're lucky," Dr. Harrison told me. "It could have been much worse. With time and rehabilitation, you should be able to regain most of your function." But I didn't feel lucky. I felt old and fragile and scared. Teresa came to visit every day, bringing flowers and books and gossip from the hospital where she worked. Emma came too, sitting with me for hours, helping me with my speech exercises, holding my hand when I got frustrated and cried. "Where's Marcus?" I asked one day, the words coming out slow and thick. Teresa and Emma exchanged looks. "Grandma," Emma said carefully, "do you want me to call him?" I thought about it. Did I want Marcus here? Did I want to see him after everything that had happened between us? "No," I said finally. "He made his choice." "Are you sure?" Emma asked. "I mean, he's still your son. Maybe this could be a chance to reconcile." "He knows where I am," I said. "If he wanted to be here, he would be." But that night, lying alone in my hospital bed, I wondered if I was being stubborn. If I should be the bigger person and reach out. No, I decided. I'd spent enough of my life trying to fix things that Marcus had broken. If he wanted a relationship with me, he knew how to find me. They released me from the hospital after a week with instructions for home care and rehabilitation. Teresa immediately took a leave of absence from her job to stay with me. "You don't have to do this," I protested. "You'll lose income." "Miss Margaret," she said firmly, "you're more important than a paycheck. Now stop arguing and let me help you." The next few months were hard. I'd always been independent, priding myself on not needing anyone, and now I couldn't even button my own shirt without help. I couldn't write my signature, couldn't hold a coffee cup in my left hand, couldn't walk without a cane. I got frustrated, I got angry, I cried, I raged against my body's betrayal. But slowly, with Teresa's help and Emma's encouragement and 3 times a week physical therapy, I got better. My speech cleared up until you could barely tell I'd had a stroke. My left arm regained most of its strength. My leg got stronger, though I still needed the cane for long distances. "You're doing amazing," my physical therapist said during one session. "Most patients your age don't recover this well." "I'm stubborn," I told her. "And I have people counting on me." 6 months after the stroke, I was back to living independently. Teresa had returned to work, though she still came by several times a week. Emma was finishing her first year of nursing school with straight A's. And I had finally accepted that this was my life now. Not what I'd planned, not what I'd hoped for, but mine nonetheless. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in April, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and my heart stopped. It was Marcus. I hadn't seen him in almost 3 years. Since the courtroom. Since the judge had ruled against him. Since he'd walked out of my life. I stood there frozen, unsure what to do. Part of me wanted to open the door to hear what he had to say. Part of me wanted to leave him standing there the way he'd left me standing alone after the stroke. Finally, I opened the door. Marcus looked older, tired. There were streaks of gray in his hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. His suit was rumpled, his tie slightly askew. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. "Marcus." We stood there looking at each other, and I waited for him to speak first. I'd done enough reaching out in my life. Now it was his turn. "I heard you had a stroke," he said finally. "Emma told me. I wanted to come see you, but I didn't know if you'd want to see me." "It took you 6 months to decide?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I know," he said. I know. I should have come sooner. I should have called. I should have done a lot of things differently. Mom? Can I come in? Can we talk? I hesitated, then stepped aside. All right. We sat in the living room in the same spots where we'd sat 3 years ago when he told me he was putting me in a home. So much had happened since then. So much pain and anger and loss. You look good, Marcus said. Emma said you've made a full recovery. Not full, I corrected. But good enough. I can take care of myself, if that's what you're worried about. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here, Marcus? He was quiet for a long moment, looking down at his hands. Brenda and I are getting divorced. I wasn't surprised. They'd always been a volatile couple held together by ambition and materialism more than love. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? He asked, looking up at me. Are you really sorry? You never liked her. No, I didn't, I admitted. But I never wanted to see you unhappy either. Well, I'm unhappy, Marcus said. I'm miserable. My business is struggling because I spent all my capital on lawyers trying to get your money. My wife is leaving me for a plastic surgeon with a yacht. My daughter barely speaks to me. And my mother won't return my calls. Not that I blame you after everything I did. Is this the part where you apologize? I asked. I'm trying to, Marcus said, his voice rising. I'm trying to tell you that I was wrong. That I fucked up. That I let Brenda poison me against you. That I was greedy and stupid and I threw away the most important relationship in my life for money I didn't even get. You were willing to throw me away long before you knew you wouldn't get the money, I pointed out. You were willing to have me declared incompetent. To lock me up. To take everything I'd worked for. I know, Marcus whispered. I know, and I hate myself for it. Mom, I've spent the last 3 years watching my life fall apart, and the worst part is knowing it's all my own fault. I did this. I destroyed my family. I destroyed my relationship with you, with Emma. And I don't know how to fix it. Maybe you can't, I said quietly. Maybe some things, once broken, can't be put back together. So that's it? Marcus asked, and there were tears in his eyes now. You're just going to cut me out of your life forever? I'm still your son, Mom. Doesn't that mean anything? Of course it means something, I said. Marcus, you're my son. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I loved you with everything I had. But you hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible. You treated me like I was nothing, like my only value was what I could give you. And when I stood up for myself, you tried to destroy me. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what else to say. Sorry doesn't fix this, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back the 3 years we've lost. Sorry doesn't erase the pain of knowing my own son saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. Do you want me to beg? I'll beg. Do you want me to grovel? I'll grovel. Just tell me what I need to do to make this right. I looked at him, really looked at him. And I saw not the successful businessman he'd always pretended to be, but a broken man who'd finally hit rock bottom. And maybe that's what he'd needed all along. I don't want you to beg, I said. I want you to understand why what you did was wrong. I want you to genuinely change. Not because you want something from me, but because you want to be a better person. I want you to rebuild your relationship with Emma. I want you to look at your life and figure out what really matters. And Marcus, even if you do all of that, even if you become the man I always hoped you'd be, I can't promise you that things will go back to the way they were. Too much has happened. We can't go back. Can we go forward? He asked. Can we at least try? I thought about it for a long moment. Thought about Gerald and what he would want. Thought about Teresa and Emma and the life I built without Marcus. Thought about whether I had it in me to forgive him one more time. Maybe, I said finally. But it's going to take time, Marcus. A lot of time. And you're going to have to prove yourself, not with words but with actions. You're going to have to show me that you've changed. That you value me as your mother, not as a source of money. I will, Marcus said, leaning forward. I promise, Mom, I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see, I said. For now, why don't you start by telling me what's really going on in your life? Not the sanitized version. The truth. And so he did. He told me about his business failures, about how Brenda had been having an affair for years, about how he pushed Emma away with his anger and criticism, about how he'd been seeing a therapist trying to figure out why he'd become the person he'd become. We talked for 3 hours, the longest conversation we'd had in years. And when he left, we didn't hug, we didn't make plans to see each other again. But there was something there. A tiny, fragile seed of possibility. After he left, I called Teresa. Marcus came by, I told her. How did it go? I don't know, I said honestly. He apologized. He said he wanted to try to rebuild our relationship, but I don't know if I can trust him. What does your gut tell you? Teresa asked. My gut says he's sincere. That he's finally hit rock bottom and he's ready to change. But my head says I've been hurt too many times already, that I should protect myself. What does your heart say? I was quiet for a moment. My heart says he's still my son. Then maybe that's your answer, Teresa said gently. You don't have to make any big decisions right now. Just take it one day at a time. See if his actions match his words. And if they don't? Then at least you'll know you tried. Over the next few months, Marcus did try. He called me every week, not asking for anything, just checking in, seeing how I was doing. He sent flowers on Mother's Day, something he hadn't done in years. He came to visit once a month, always respectful, always asking permission first. He started going to therapy, not just individual counseling but family therapy with Emma, working to repair the damage he'd done there. And slowly, very slowly, I started to believe he might actually be changing. But I didn't change my will. Teresa was still the primary beneficiary. Emma still had her trust. Marcus would still get the Cleveland property and nothing more. When Robert asked me if I wanted to reconsider now that Marcus was back in my life, I said no. Why not? Robert asked. If you're rebuilding your relationship. Because the will isn't a punishment, I said. It's a reflection of who was there for me when I needed them most. Teresa earned her place in my will through years of loyalty and love. Marcus is my son and I'm glad we're working on our relationship, but that doesn't change the past. Fair enough, Robert said. 2 more years passed. I was 72 now and feeling my age. The stroke had left some lingering effects. I tired more easily, had trouble with balance on bad days. But overall I was healthy and happy. Marcus and I had found a new normal. We weren't as close as we'd been when he was young, but we had a relationship. We had lunch once a month, talked on the phone every week, spent holidays together with Emma. He'd met Teresa several times, and while the first meeting had been awkward, eventually they'd found a way to coexist. Marcus had even apologized to her for the things he'd said during the court case. Emma had graduated from nursing school and gotten a job at the hospital where Teresa worked. They'd become close, almost like mother and daughter, and seeing them together filled my heart with joy. And then one evening in December, I got a phone call from Robert. Margaret, he said, and his voice was serious. I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come by tomorrow? Of course, I said. Is everything all right? We'll talk tomorrow. He arrived at 10 the next morning, and the look on his face told me this was serious. What's wrong? I asked as soon as he sat down. I've been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Robert said bluntly. The doctors are saying I have maybe 6 months. A year if I'm lucky. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Robert had been my lawyer, my friend, my confidant for over 25 years. Oh, Robert, I'm so sorry. Thank you, he said. But that's not why I'm here. I need to make arrangements for my practice, for my clients. And Margaret, I need to talk to you about your will. What about it? I need to make sure everything is in order. That all the documents are updated, that there are no loose ends. When I'm gone, you're going to need a new lawyer, and I want to make sure the transition is smooth. We spent the next hour reviewing everything. The will, the trusts, the property deeds, all of it was current, all of it was legally sound. There's one more thing, Robert said as he was packing up his briefcase. Have you thought about what you want for your own end-of-life care? Do you have a living will? A healthcare proxy. I have a living will, I said. And I've named Teresa as my healthcare proxy. I trust her to make the right decisions. What about Marcus? What about him? Margaret, you've rebuilt your relationship with him. Don't you think he should be involved in these decisions? I thought about it. Marcus is my son and I love him. But when it comes to my medical care, when it comes to making decisions about my life and death, I trust Teresa. She's been there for me in ways Marcus hasn't. She's proven herself. All right, Robert said. I just wanted to make sure you thought it through. After Robert left, I sat in my living room thinking about mortality. Thinking about how much time I had left. I'd had a good life. Not a perfect one, but a good one. I'd loved and been loved. I'd built something meaningful. I'd survived betrayal and heartbreak and come out stronger. And when the time came, I wanted to go knowing that I'd made my own choices, that I'd lived life on my own terms. I called Teresa. Miss Margaret, what's up? I just had a visit from Robert, I said. He's sick, Teresa. Very sick. And it made me think about my own mortality. Don't talk like that, you're going to be around for a long time. Maybe, I said. But maybe not. And I want to make sure you understand what I'm asking of you by making you my healthcare proxy. It's a big responsibility. I understand, Teresa said. And I'm honored that you trust me with it. If the time comes, if I'm ever in a situation where I can't make my own medical decisions, I don't want extraordinary measures. I don't want to be kept alive by machines. I want to go peacefully, with dignity. Do you understand? I understand, Teresa said quietly. And I want you to know that whatever happens, you've already given me so much more than you realize. You gave me friendship and dignity and love when I needed it most. You gave me a reason to fight when my own son tried to take everything from me. You're the daughter I never had, Teresa. And I'm so grateful for you. Miss Margaret, you're going to make me cry. Good, I said, cry. It means you feel something. It means you're alive. Robert passed away 4 months later. The funeral was huge. He'd been well loved in the legal community. Hundreds of people came to pay their respects. I sat in the second row with Teresa and Emma and, yes, Marcus, who had insisted on coming to support me. After the service, we all went back to my house. Are you okay, Mom? Marcus asked. I'm sad, I said. Robert was a good friend. But I'm also grateful that I got to say goodbye, that we had time to put everything in order. He was a good man, Marcus said. And I'm sorry for how I treated him during the court case. He was just doing his job, protecting you. Yes, he was, I agreed. We sat together in the living room eating the food people had brought, drinking wine, sharing stories about Robert. And I realized this was what family was supposed to be. Not perfect, not without conflict, but there when it mattered. A few months after Robert's funeral, I hired a new lawyer, a sharp young woman named Lisa Martinez who came highly recommended. I've reviewed all of your documents, Mrs. Blackwell, she said at our first meeting. Everything is in excellent order. Robert did beautiful work. He did, I agreed. I want to make sure it all stays that way. I'll make sure of it, Lisa promised. Do you have any changes you want to make? I thought about it. No. I'm happy with everything the way it is. Even with your son. I understand you've reconciled. We're working on it, I said. But that doesn't change my will. Marcus knows where things stand. We've talked about it. He's not happy, but he accepts it. That was mostly true. Marcus and I had had a difficult conversation about the will a few months earlier. Mom, I'm not asking you to change it, he'd said. I know I don't deserve your money after what I did. But I want you to know that I understand why you made the choices you made, and I respect them. Do you really? I'd asked. Yes, he said. Teresa was there for you when I wasn't. She earned her place in your will. I can't be angry about that. I can only be ashamed of myself for not being the son you needed. It was the first time Marcus had taken full responsibility for his actions without excuses or justifications, and it meant more to me than any apology. Now, at 73, I was slowing down. More doctor's appointments, more medications, more days when my energy just wasn't what it used to be. But I was happy. I had Teresa, who came by 3 times a week to check on me. I had Emma, who called me every day and visited every weekend. I had Marcus, who was trying his best to make up for lost time. And I had my life, my home, my garden, my books, my friends. I'd made peace with my choices, with my past, with my future. And then one morning in late September, I woke up feeling strange. Not sick exactly, but off. Like something wasn't quite right. I managed to get out of bed, get dressed, make coffee. But as I was walking to the living room, my legs gave out. I fell hard, hitting my head on the corner of the coffee table. I tried to call for help, but I couldn't make my mouth form the words. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. Teresa was sitting next to my bed holding my hand. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You scared us, Miss Margaret." I tried to talk, but my throat was so dry. "Here," Teresa said, holding a cup of water with the straw to my lips. Small sips. The water helped. "What happened?" I managed to croak out. "You had another stroke," Teresa said. "A bigger one this time. You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days. I'd lost 3 days. "The doctors say you're going to be okay," Teresa continued. "But it's going to be a longer recovery this time. The stroke affected your speech and mobility more significantly than the last one." I wanted to cry, wanted to rage against the unfairness of it all. But I was too tired. Over the next few weeks, I learned the full extent of the damage. My left side was almost completely paralyzed. My speech was slurred. My memory was spotty. I couldn't walk, couldn't feed myself, couldn't do any of the basic tasks I'd taken for granted. And for the first time since this whole ordeal with Marcus had begun, I wondered if maybe he'd been right. Maybe I was too old to live alone. Maybe I did need help. Maybe I should have accepted his offer of the nursing home when he first made it. But then I remembered that his offer hadn't been about helping me, it had been about helping himself. And that made all the difference. Teresa took another leave of absence to care for me. This time she insisted on moving into my house full time. "You need round-the-clock care, Miss Margaret, and I'm going to provide it." "You can't put your whole life on hold for me," I protested. "Watch me," she said. Emma helped too, coming over after her shifts at the hospital to sit with me, to help with my physical therapy, to keep me company. And yes, Marcus came too, awkward and uncertain, unsure of his place in this new dynamic, but there. "Mom," he said one evening when we were alone, "I know this isn't what you want to hear, but we need to talk about your long-term care. You can't keep living like this. It's not fair to Teresa or Emma." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I already knew. "There's a really good facility near my house," he said. "Top-rated nurses, physical therapists on staff, activities. They can provide the level of care you need." "You mean the nursing home you wanted to put me in 3 years ago?" "Mom, that's not fair. Isn't it?" "The difference is," Marcus said carefully, "this time it's your choice. I'm not trying to force you or manipulate you. I'm genuinely worried about you, and I think you need more help than Teresa can provide." "I'll think about it," I said. But I didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to admit that maybe he was right. That night, after Marcus left, Teresa and I talked. "He's right, you know," she said. "You need more care than I can give you on my own." "So you think I should go to the nursing home?" "I think you should consider all your options," Teresa said. "There are home health aides we could hire. Round-the-clock care in your own home. You don't have to leave here if you don't want to." "How much would that cost?" "A lot," Teresa admitted. "But you can afford it." "Can you?" I asked. She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "Teresa, when I die you're going to inherit everything. But if I spend years in expensive home care, there might not be much left." "Miss Margaret," Teresa said firmly, I don't care about the money. I never have. All I care about is you being comfortable and safe, whatever that looks like. And that was when I knew for certain that I'd made the right choice. We hired home health aides, a rotating team of 3 women who worked 8-hour shifts providing round-the-clock care. It was expensive, terribly expensive, but it meant I could stay in my own home, surrounded by my own things, my memories, my life. The aides were wonderful, patient and kind and professional. But they weren't Teresa. Teresa was family. Months passed. I improved slowly, regaining some function in my left arm, learning to walk with a walker. My speech got better, though I still slurred when I was tired. On good days I could sit in my garden and feel the sun on my face. On bad days I stayed in bed and watched old movies. Emma visited every weekend. Marcus came once a week. Teresa was there almost every day. "You have a good life, Miss Margaret," one of the aides told me. "A lot of love." She was right. I did have love. Not the life I'd imagined for myself, not the perfect family I'd hoped for, but love nonetheless. And then one evening in June, when I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset, Teresa came over with news. "Miss Margaret," she said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I'm getting married." I looked at her in surprise. "Married? To whom? When did this happen?" Teresa laughed. "His name is David. He's a doctor at the hospital. We've been dating for about a year. I didn't want to tell you because with everything you've been going through, I didn't want to add to your stress." "Teresa," I said, "this is wonderful news. I'm so happy for you." "Really?" she asked. "You're not upset that I kept it from you?" "Of course not. When's the wedding?" "Next month," she said. "And Miss Margaret, I want you to be there. I want you to be part of it. Your family." Tears filled my eyes. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The wedding was beautiful, a small ceremony in a garden overlooking the ocean. Teresa wore a simple white dress and looked radiant. I sat in the front row in my wheelchair with Emma on one side and Marcus on the other. When the minister asked who gave this woman to be married, I raised my hand. "I do," I said, my voice clear and strong. After the ceremony, Teresa came over and hugged me. "Thank you for being here, Miss Margaret. This means everything to me." "Thank you for letting me be part of your life," I said. "Thank you for everything you've given me." That night, lying in my bed in my own house, I thought about how strange life was. How the people who were supposed to be there sometimes weren't, and how strangers could become family. I thought about Marcus and how far we'd come, how he'd changed and grown, and how I'd learned to forgive if not forget. I thought about Emma and how proud I was of the woman she'd become. And I thought about Teresa. About how one act of kindness had changed both our lives forever. I was 74 years old. I'd had 2 strokes. I needed help with basic daily tasks. But I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. And when the time came, when I finally closed my eyes for the last time, I wanted to know that I'd lived a full life. That I'd loved and been loved. That I'd stood up for myself even when it was hard. 3 months after Teresa's wedding, I caught pneumonia. It started as a simple cold, but in my weakened state, it quickly became serious. The doctor recommended hospitalization, but I refused. "I want to stay home," I told Teresa, who was my healthcare proxy. "Whatever happens, I want it to happen here." "Are you sure, Miss Margaret? The hospital has better equipment, better care." "I'm sure," I said. "I've had a good life, Teresa. I'm ready." She was crying. "Please don't talk like that." "Listen to me," I said, taking her hand with my good right hand. "If it's my time, I want you to know that you made my final years beautiful. You gave me dignity and love and a reason to keep fighting. I couldn't have asked for a better daughter." "You're not dying, Miss Margaret," Teresa said fiercely. "You're going to beat this just like you've beaten everything else." But we both knew she was wrong. They brought in a hospital bed, set it up in my living room where I could look out at the garden I'd tended for 40 years. Teresa stayed with me around the clock. Emma came straight from work and didn't leave. Marcus came too, sitting quietly in the corner, not knowing what to say. Mom, he said on the third day, I need to tell you something. What is it? My voice was barely a whisper now. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For being a terrible son. For hurting you. For caring more about money than about you. I'm so sorry. And I know it's too late, but I need you to know that I love you. That I've always loved you, even when I didn't show it. I know, I said. And I forgive you, Marcus. I forgive you. He broke down then, sobbing like a child. And Emma went to him, held him, let him cry. That night, when everyone else had gone to sleep, Teresa sat with me. Are you scared? She asked. No, I said truthfully. I'm ready. Gerald's been waiting for me for so long. What do you want me to do after? Teresa asked. With the house? With everything? Live, I said simply. Use the resources I'm leaving you to build a beautiful life. Help other people the way you helped me. And Teresa, don't feel guilty about the money. You earned every penny. I love you, Miss Margaret, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. I closed my eyes and let myself drift. The next morning, I didn't wake up. My memorial service was held in the garden. Teresa had arranged everything exactly as I'd specified in my final wishes. It was small, just close friends and family. Emma spoke about the grandmother who had taught her the importance of standing up for yourself. Marcus spoke about the mother he'd failed and the forgiveness he didn't deserve. Teresa spoke about the woman who had changed her life. And then it was time for the reading of the will. Lisa Martinez, my lawyer, gathered everyone in the living room. Marcus sat with Emma. Teresa sat with her new husband, David. There were a few other people, friends from my book club, neighbors who had been kind. This is the last will and testament of Margaret Blackwell, Lisa began. She read through the preliminary sections, the usual legal language, and then got to the distribution of assets. To my granddaughter, Emma Brooks, I leave the sum of $200,000 in trust to be used for her education and the beginning of her career. I also leave her my jewelry collection, with the hope that she will think of me when she wears it. Emma was crying softly. To my son, Marcus Blackwell, I leave the rental property located in Cleveland, Ohio, and the sum of $100,000. These are given not as a reward, but as an acknowledgement that you are my son and I want you to be financially secure, even though our relationship has been difficult. Marcus's face was unreadable. The remainder of my estate, Lisa continued, including my primary residence, all other properties, my investment portfolio, and all remaining assets, are left to Teresa Johnson Martinez, in recognition of the care, compassion, and genuine love she has shown me during the final years of my life. Teresa has been more than a nurse, she has been a daughter in every way that matters, and I trust her to use these resources wisely and generously. There was silence in the room. There's also a letter, Lisa said. Addressed to Marcus. Would you like me to read it or would you prefer to read it privately? Read it, Marcus said, his voice rough. Lisa opened the envelope and began to read. Dear Marcus, by the time you hear this, I will be gone, and you will know that my will has not changed despite our reconciliation. You are probably hurt, possibly angry, definitely confused. So let me explain. The will is not a punishment. Nor is it a rejection of the relationship we rebuilt in my final years. It is simply an acknowledgement of who was there when I needed them most. Teresa earned her place in my will through years of loyalty and care. You, Marcus, earned your place in my will by being my son. And that is worth something, but it is not worth everything. You and I made peace before I died. We found a way to forgive and move forward. And that is worth more than any amount of money could ever be. I hope you understand that the greatest gift I could give you was not money, but the chance to become the man you were always meant to be. I love you, Marcus. I always have. But love does not mean rewarding behavior that hurt me. It means holding you accountable and still choosing to have a relationship with you. I hope you take the resources I've left you and build something meaningful. I hope you continue your therapy, your growth, your journey to becoming a better person. And I hope that someday, when you think of me, you remember not the court case, Not the conflict, but the love we managed to salvage at the end. Your mother. Margaret. Marcus was openly weeping now. Lisa folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. That concludes the reading of the will. If anyone has questions, I'm available to answer them. I have a question, Marcus said, his voice shaking. How much? How much is Teresa getting? Lisa looked uncomfortable. The estate is valued at approximately $6.8 million. After taxes and your bequests, Teresa will inherit approximately $6.2 million. Marcus let out a long breath. That's a lot of money. Yes, it is, Lisa agreed. Marcus turned to Teresa, who was sitting very still. Are you going to contest it? She asked quietly. Marcus looked at her for a long moment and then shook his head. No. I'm not. My mother made her choice and I respect it. Besides, she was right. You were there for her when I wasn't. You earned this. Thank you, Teresa whispered. But I do want to ask you something, Marcus said. What? Use it well. Make my mother proud. Honor her memory. I will, Teresa promised. I absolutely will. After everyone left, Emma and Teresa stayed behind to go through the house. Look at all these photo albums, Emma said, pulling them from the shelf. Grandma kept everything. They spent hours looking through pictures. Margaret as a young woman in Georgia. Margaret and Gerald on their wedding day. Margaret holding baby Marcus. Margaret at her retirement party. Margaret in her garden. And there, at the very end, was a photo that Teresa had taken just 2 months earlier. Margaret sitting on her porch in her wheelchair, looking at the sunset, a slight smile on her face. She looks happy, Emma said. She was, Teresa replied. At the end, despite everything, she was happy. What are you going to do with all this money? Emma asked. I'm going to start a foundation, Teresa said. To help elderly people who are being financially exploited by their families. I'm going to provide legal help, medical advocates, home care, whatever they need. Your grandmother taught me that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the worst, and I want to make sure no one else has to go through what she did. She would love that, Emma said. She would be so proud. I hope so, Teresa said. I'm going to call it the Gerald and Margaret Blackwell Foundation. In honor of both of them. Perfect, Emma said. They sat there in the quiet house, surrounded by memories. And I like to think that somewhere, Margaret was watching, smiling, knowing that she had made the right choice. Her money hadn't gone to someone who wanted it, but to someone who would use it to make the world a little bit better. And in the end, isn't that what all of us hope for? That our lives will have meaning. That our choices will matter. That the people we love will remember us fondly. Margaret Blackwell had lived a full life. Not a perfect one, but a good one. She had loved deeply, she had suffered greatly. She had forgiven when forgiveness seemed impossible, and she had stood up for herself even when it cost her everything. And now she was at peace, reunited with Gerald, free from pain, free from conflict, free from the weight of earthly concerns. Her story was over, but her legacy lived on. In Emma, who was learning to be a compassionate nurse. In Marcus, who was learning to be a better man. And in Teresa, who would spend the rest of her life honoring the woman who had given her everything. If you like my story, you can support me by making a donation so I can write more stories. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think. And also write me where you heard this story. For more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.